Let's rewind to 1930. One tariff sparked a chain reaction, redrawing alliances, collapsing economies, and redefining borders. Now, fast forward to today. Trump is back, and he's made it clear. China must be pushed out of the global supply chain. And the first pressure point? Vietnam. Why is the US planning a 20% tariff on Vietnamese imports? Why is Vietnam suddenly the center of a global trade storm? And what does it mean for your next phone or your next paycheck? This isn't just trade. This is economic warfare. And Vietnam is on the front line. Over the past 5 years, I've been immersed in studying how economies evolve when global trade rules suddenly shift. And what's happening now, what we're all living through, isn't just another adjustment. It's the early construction of a new economic order. One where geography, politics, and trade no longer operate in silos, but collide in ways we haven't seen since the Cold War. The anatomy of economic pressure. What really fascinates me is the power dynamic behind trade. Take the current US-Vietnam trade balance, $123.5 billion in Vietnam's favor. That's not just a number. It's a visible metric of economic dependency. When global powers want to shift trade dynamics, they rarely announce it outright. Instead, they build what I'd call pressure architectures, systems of subtle incentives and quiet penalties that change behavior without a single direct order. Picture this. The US rolls out a tiered tariff system targeting Vietnamese goods. Not aggressive, but strategic. A modest base rate makes local US production more appealing, while significantly higher tariffs target trans-shipped goods, products rerouted through Vietnam to bypass existing tariffs. The psychology of economic choice. Behavioral economists talk about something called loss aversion, our tendency to fear losing what we already have. Now apply that to corporations. Imagine you're a company that spent years building a supply chain through Vietnam. Suddenly, you're facing a tough call. Either rebuild that chain entirely or accept shrinking margins. And the brilliance or danger of this approach. It doesn't need force. The market handles the pressure, quietly, efficiently. And companies adjust their own behavior. You're running an electronics firm. Your parts come from China, your assemblies in Vietnam, and your biggest customer is in the USA. New tariff structure hits. Now, your choice is clear. Pay the premium or rethink your suppliers. This is how policy becomes geopolitics, one business decision at a time. Let's pause. Trade policy often feels abstract. Percentages, tariffs, models. But every one of those decisions has a human impact. For an American family, trade restructuring could mean an extra $4,700 a year on everyday goods. That's more than just math. That's groceries, a family trip, part of a college semester. And for Vietnam, this isn't abstract at all. The manufacturing sector employs over 16 million people. Reshaping the supply chain affects real families, entire communities, and the country's economic future. So we have to ask, how do we weigh national interests against global human outcomes? History shows that when pressure builds, nations adapt. Vietnam likely wouldn't freeze, it would pivot. Fast. Economists call it strategic adaptation. First, market diversification. Vietnam's already doing it, lowering U.S. export dependence from 30% to 25%, and growing European exports by 18% under its EU trade deal. Second, industrial upgrading, moving from low-value assembly to original design and manufacturing. Hard but powerful. Third, alliance economics, building new trade blocs with countries facing similar pressures, creating alternative paths around traditional dependencies. But here's where the pattern widens. This isn't just about US-Vietnam, it's about the crumbling of the post-World War II idea that global trade works best when it's multilateral. ASEAN, for instance, has always leaned on consensus building. But when push comes to shove, when countries like Thailand, Indonesia, and Cambodia face sudden trade pressure, will they act together? Or look out for themselves? History suggests, when survival is on the line, bilateral deals beat group unity. It's not cynicism, it's realism. And the ripple effects go way beyond trade numbers. Of course, Beijing's response matters. China sees unilateral trade moves as WTO violations, and they're watching. Yes, they have options, but they're limited. Retaliating too harshly against Vietnam would look like bullying a neighbor, something China likely wants to avoid. Plus, replacing Vietnam's manufacturing footprint isn't easy, especially in sectors that rely on tightly integrated supply chains. Now let's talk tech, because this part rarely gets attention in trade conversations. Look at Vietnam's biggest tech manufacturers, Foxconn, Pegatron. These aren't just factories. They're key nodes in the global tech web. If trade shifts, they'll face a huge decision. Keep sourcing Chinese components or protect US market access? This isn't about tariffs anymore. It's about the structure of tomorrow's technology ecosystem. Your phone, your laptop, your smart home devices, all of it. Connected to decisions being made right now in Washington and Beijing. And that brings us to the heart of it all. We're not bystanders in this. We're part of it. Every product we buy, every company we support, every policy we vote for, shapes the next version of the global economy. So it's not just a battle between free trade and protectionism. It's a choice between two visions of how human societies connect. One prioritizes efficiency, the other, resilience. The most successful nations? They'll be the ones that master both, building deep partnerships while also preparing for strategic independence. But that requires clarity and courage. Let's go back to that crossroads we started with. The decisions being made right now, in Vietnam, in China, in the US, they're defining the next phase of globalization. A more multipolar world or a fractured one? Neither outcome is inherently good or bad. Each path holds its own risks and rewards. But we can't afford to drift. We have to choose, with full awareness of what's at stake. So I'll leave you with this. What kind of global economy do you want the next generation to inherit? One driven by cooperation or competition? Stability or sovereignty? These trade choices might feel technical, but they're anything but. They're shaping the next chapter of our shared economic story, and our role in writing it begins now. Thanks for watching. If you found this video useful, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to the Capital Compass, so you won't miss any future deep dives into the forces shaping our world. See you in the next video.